So when you become a nomad, not everything is rainbows and sunshine. It's just not. There are going to be problems. And so we're kind of addressing this as the worst surprises we had, the most unpleasant surprises we had once we became nomads. And so if you know about them beforehand, you can expect them. And when they happen, hopefully we can help you with understanding a solution to those problems as they come up. But it's just knowing that they're coming and there's something you have to adapt to, and adapting is good.
Well, I will share the worst surprise I had in van life is how difficult power has been for me. I have multiple power stations. As a digital nomad and somebody who wants a fridge, and I have a very small fridge, it's only 19 quarts, but between charging all my devices, sometimes needing Starlink, and running my fridge, I really struggle with power. And I'm 4 years into nomadic life at this point, and I have a solution when there is abundant sunshine. I've got a generator and found ways that I can take a power station and charge it in a cafe, but that takes a very long time. The generator is very heavy, noisy. It's just one of those things I cope with it, but it is my least favorite part of van life. And linked to that, I can't have the climate control that I prefer and was very comfortable with in house life, because climate control takes a lot of power that I just don't have.
I can definitely relate to that, because I think it is all about a learning curve. So when I first hit the road, this is 2009, I put one single 80-watt panel up on top. I was like, oh, I have solar, I'm good. You're not. That's not nearly enough for what I was using it for. If I'm running low on power, well, then I don't use my toaster oven, or I don't use my rice cooker. I do things on the stove. I have the option of always going to propane. Same with the refrigerator that runs off propane. So you just kind of learn what your limits are. Now for Autumn's case of actually needing to work online, that is a little different situation. And so you have to kind of make solutions for that separately. But for a lot of us, you just reduce your consumption of electricity until you can build it back up.
Even though that is my greatest irritation in nomadic life, it's absolutely worth it, but expect that it might be a frustration.
And I want to go ahead and go next, and mine is how little I could own, how much paring down I had to do, because I was in a house. I'd always lived in a house. And so and then when I was absolutely forced to live in a van, so I had to move everything in. And so I moved everything in, and oh my goodness, there was no room for me, and 2/3 of it was still in the house. And so it just became this nightmare of going to thrift stores and going to the dump. That was a really, really big deal.
With these space limitations, you really have to choose. Do I want more solar, or do I want to have a chair that I can put in a cargo box? And I do want a chair, otherwise I'm sitting in the van all day.
Right.
But that can be a tricky thing when you start to have to choose between chair or power.
And Brian, you're in an RV, and you got all the room that you want.
I do, but I will say it was still difficult. So when I first moved into it, I actually moved into it with the girl I was dating, and it was tough fitting all of our stuff. We both had separate houses at the time, and we were combining those things into this one 23-foot long motorhome. And so there was a lot of decision makings of like, okay, we can't have this, we can't have this. Just know that it is going to be hard to make those decisions and figure out what do you need, start with that. And then you can layer on what you want in some of those superfluous items if you have room. You may not have room though. So one of the biggest surprises I came across when I hit the road was finding resources on the road. If you need a mechanic, if you need a vet, and things are gonna happen, and you are in a new town all the time. So how do you find those resources and trust those resources? So could be also just finding water. It's everyday things that we need to survive on the road, but it's not as easy as just turning the faucet on or flushing the toilet, or you live in a town for 20 years and you know the mechanic to go to, you have your doctors.
For me, I found a home base. For a very long time, it was Pahrump, Nevada. And I would just travel through Pahrump in the spring on the way north and in the fall on the way south. And I had my doctors there, I had my vet there. Everything I needed was in that town that I needed to go to on an annual or semi-annual basis. And I went through that town, going north, going south. It was a bit out of the way, but it worked, and it solved that particular resource issue. A resource issue that is still a problem is trash and water. In the desert Southwest, almost everywhere you go, there is a kiosk where you can go buy water. And when you leave here, it becomes even harder to find water. In fact, we were just in Alaska this last summer, and getting water was a major issue. We just couldn't hardly do it. I carry a filter, and in Alaska there's a lot of creeks, so when I got creek water, I would filter it and I would have it for myself. But it's a pretty big issue, water and trash. Where do you put your trash? I don't want to take advantage. I don't want to I'm not going to leave trash. I always pick up trash. But I don't want to take advantage of businesses and take a big sack and throw it in their thing and fill it up and have them deal with it. So, and that's not been I've resolved that. I might put everything in small sacks. When I go and get gas, I put it in their can. That's perfectly reasonable. It's, Walmart sack.
The key is not to have a big garbage bag full of stuff. And I've seen people with that, and then you have to figure out what to do with it.
Yes.
Doing those small, compact things are so much more easily disposed of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was laughing when you mentioned Alaska because in Alaska, the place has so much abundant water, but I didn't have a filter. And there was one place where the only way to get water was $5.25 a gallon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But what I'll share that I really relate to with this resource piece is it relates to an item on my list, which is adaptation fatigue. I think just that piece of I have to adapt to finding something new everywhere I go, and that can be really, really exhausting for me. Even being able to find, say, a Walmart or a grocery store that you rely on, when you have a home base, you can just go to those same places. And I never knew to appreciate so much that I knew where the shampoo aisle was, that I knew where the coffee aisle was, because in different cities and different stores, those things are in different places. Essentially kind of staying in one place longer has been my solution.
I probably have a dozen places that I typically go to throughout the year. And so I know those dozen places pretty well.
One of the things I've done is I take the whole summer in one state and explore it. So I spent a summer in Oregon and just traveled around it. And you get to know the local chains, and you get to know the areas, and you travel back and forth. And so you can kind of eliminate that adaptation fatigue that way. The next thing I'd like to talk about is disorientation. I can remember so well when I first moved into a van, I was living in a city. So that's harder. When you're living in a city, it's harder because there's constant noise and light and activity at night, and you're sleeping in a completely unknown place. Let me give you an example. I was sleeping away in my van, and I woke up in the middle of the night to three homeless drunks outside my van. They were leaning up against the van, and they were arguing with each other, and they were fighting with each other, and they were drinking, and that went on for a long time. And so I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm deep sleep, and there's right out on the van wall people banging around, and it very, very disorienting.
That was affecting your sleep. And so that is something you have to get used to as well, is that these disturbances, especially if you're city dwelling and you are stealth parking, you're going to have those interruptions. And so that is something that you really have to get used to, which can be really difficult.
One of the ways that I relate to this is initially I loved the disorienting feeling of waking up and saying, what state am I in?
Yeah.
But I will share, I truly believe the nomadic life has hurt my short-term memory. And I'm shocked about this. I'm like, what Walmart was I in? What state was that? What city was that? What was that landmark at? There's so much constant change that my own memory itself has kind of deteriorated some because of the disorientation.
Blends all together.
Yep.
Yeah. Memory will pop into my brain, and I'll think, where was that? I love that camp. And I just can't bring it up out of the thousands of camps I've had in the last 20 years.
One of the things I was not expecting in van life is the amount of exhaustion I've had. Now, I'm actually kind of a tired woman. I always have been. I was prone to burnout before nomadic life. And I didn't realize how much exhaustion I would experience from fun, beautiful, exciting, novel things. I went to Alaska. It was one of the best experiences of my life. I've been back 4 or 5 months now, and I still think I'm recovering from that, from just exhaustion of excitement. There's so much energy expended when you are in novelty. And along those lines, there are certain things about van life that just take so much energy. Every time I refill water or do laundry, it's kind of like a half-day ordeal. Making my bed and cleaning my rig in van life, which is something I do every single day, because if I don't, then life is chaos. But it takes 3 to 4 to 5 times longer in van life because it's working in such a small space. So I've just noticed that essentially all the chores I do take more time and take more energy.
Well, and also just your body adapting to even sometimes those extreme hots and colds will just wear you down. So if it's really hot out, I'm not doing much. I am tired a lot when it's hot out. When it's cold, I just don't want to be outside. But if you do go outside, it just wears on you a little bit more because you are in nature. You have wind, you sun, snow, rain, all these things that it does just kind of zap you a little bit.
Yeah, it almost could be its own surprise was how long everything took. Everything was a little harder. You couldn't just flip a switch and have your lights on. You had to make sure all the solar was working, and you had to make sure the light was on, and maybe you had to plug something in or do this, adapt that, change the batteries. Everything took a little longer. Going to the bathroom was much harder. I use a bucket, and so I've got to deal with the stuff. I don't push a button and it goes away and I never see it again. A lot of inconveniences of normal average things that you don't expect that come along and just consume a lot of your time.
Even just, taking a shower, just basic cleaning, it's not as easy as just, I'm going to go across the hall to the bathroom and jump in the shower. It's more of a process.
One of the ways that has helped me cope with this, because sometimes I'll be honest, I'll get really annoyed because I'll be like, I don't want to make my bed today and it's raining outside and it takes so long. And I could get stuck in that place and lose joy for van life. So what I do to help me with this is I think to myself, yeah, I don't like handling my poop. But would I rather work a 9 to 5 for the rest of my life? Like if those are my options, then you know what? I'm going to handle my poop in the rain versus go back to a life where I was in wage slavery. I've literally had the thought where I'm like, this is so unpleasant. But then I think, do I want to trade 40 years of my life for this? No. At least I'm doing it out in nature,
Keep your eye on the prize. All those wonderful things, they do come with these things and you adapt to them. Just accept that these things are going to be less convenient and you're going to deal with it.
Going on to the next thing that was on my list was we talked earlier about, finding resources, about, needing a mechanic. You will break down eventually. It's not a if, it's a when you will break down. So just kind of mentally preparing yourself for that, I think, is huge. But again, you have to know that is going to happen. It's absolutely never fun when you break down. It's stressful. So many things, emotions are going on. You're not alone. We all go through this. Don't feel special because you broke down. We're all in the same boat. And I've broken down plenty of times on the side of the road, and you just figure things out.
Yep. Your home's with you.
Absolutely.
You're not homeless. Like you, I've had many breakdowns in my over 20 years of doing this. And one stands out specifically. I broke a belt, didn't have a replacement, didn't know how to put it on, and pulled over safely on the side of the road and just said, I'm going to make dinner. I made dinner and I watched a movie and ate dinner and took my dog Homer for a walk, and it was just another night. And the next day I went out and flagged somebody down and went into the next town, paid the $160 for a tow truck, and life went on.
Kind of the theme we've been talking about, having the foresight of this will happen. It happens to people with $200,000 Sprinter vans. So it's just part of the process, and it's like, okay, all right. I mean, I've broken down in every rig I've been in.
And again, there's certain things you can do out there to help alleviate some of these stresses is, getting roadside assistance, having a good roadside assistance that will handle your situation. Having, we talked about this earlier about having some mechanical aptitude or ability to just do some basic stuff. You don't have to be a mechanic, arm deep into your engine, but just knowing some basic things like how to change a belt. For me, I always bring a spare belt for that reason. Even if you don't know how to change it, you will have the part. Someone else, they may be driving by, they may be able to help you. So just doing certain things that you're kind of hedging your bets, or just making it as prepared as you can be, so when these things do happen, you don't freak out. You have your home with you, and you're not going to starve. You're not going to lose shelter. You You'll be okay. It just may be a little stressful.
So my last challenging surprise for being in van life is actually seeing what happened to the real estate market since I've been a van lifer. I've been a van lifer now for 4 years, and it's truly troubling. It's dystopian. It's hard for me to believe it's real. It feels extraordinarily inhumane. The home I was living in, I was paying $1,000 for, which was a good deal at the time. That is going for about $2,600 to $2,800 right now in rent. 4 years. Wages have not increased to keep up with this. So we're all dealing with this massive inflation crisis, and it's hit the real estate market so hard. I feel really, really blessed that I want to do this life for the rest of my life. But if you are thinking of doing van life as more of a temporary thing and an adventure, and you do plan to go back into kind of a more normative society, just be prepared. Start putting savings away so that you're not caught so off guard. I would not be able to afford the house I lived in before I did this. I just couldn't.
We always talk about emergency fund, things like that. That could be part of your emergency fund, is when you do get off the road, that you do have that chunk of money so that you are not, put in the position where you can't afford the first and last month's rent. And, again, this is if you get off the road. You don't need to get off the road. I don't ever plan to get off the road. So I'm just throwing that out. That's my solution. Just don't go off the road. But if you do have to prepare for that emergency fund that you've been saving up for another RV or a breakdown or this and that, that can be used for, getting into an apartment or something like that.
Let me just re-emphasize having that emergency fund.
Yes.
An emergency fund will make all of these problems much less huge. All these negative surprises that you might run into are going to be really helped if you know you have the money in the bank to get you through not every problem, but most problems. So if you don't have an emergency fund, build one. And I have one more that I want to talk about, and then we'll be done here. And it's legal issues that you don't think about until you're on the road. I think one that we're all familiar with is if you're stealth camping in a city, or if you're parking out on public land, someone knocks on the door and says, well, he's got a star on his chest. He's a law enforcement officer. And he says, you can't be here. You got to move right now. That's a legal issue, isn't it? And I guess, have you guys all had a knock?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're going to have the knock. And so you need to be aware that first, try to avoid it. And I work really hard at never being any place illegally. But sometimes you're going to make a mistake, or he's having a bad day and he's just going to go and roust you for the fun of it. Be aware there are certain legal issues that you are going to have to deal with.
So as I think about all of this in summary, my thoughts are expect challenges. Expect challenges that you probably won't even foresee. Again, these were surprises for us. Be responsible. This is such a life of freedom. We can't have that freedom without responsibility, of an emergency fund, of leave no trace ethics, and really build within yourself a character, a perspective of there will be challenges, and even if they're unpleasant, I will be able to handle it. So even though these are challenges and they have been tricky, they're absolutely workable. And I think we would all say they're absolutely worth it.
Sure, I've solved them all.
So folks, we hope you got something out of this video. If you have solutions to these problems that we haven't mentioned, share them in the comments below. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye now.